Hey guys, I'm back with a really quick video. This was actually supposed to be tacked on to the last one, but because of computer problems, it didn't quite pan out that way. So this is going to be a really short video on the election of 1860 and the start of the Civil War. So this is kind of like your big initial spark towards the beginning of the Civil War. This is the straw that broke the camel's back, the election of 1860. So there's a few things going on with the election of 1860. Republicans are going to nominate Abraham Lincoln, which we remember, he was impressing a whole lot of people based on his performance during his debates with Stephen Douglas for the Illinois Senate seat. And he impressed the Republican Party. The Republican Party at the time was still pretty much made up of old free soilers, anti-slavery Whigs and Democrats, mainly from the North. But yeah, that's the culmination of the Republican Party. So it wasn't that they wanted slavery to be abolished completely. That's not the case. They wanted slavery to be contained where it's at. Essentially, yeah, they're free soilers. They don't want slavery to extend any further, like the territories. So, they're also going to promise stuff like tariff protection for industry. They're going to promote the Transcontinental Railroad and want to open up westward expansion by promising deals like what would become the Homestead Act that would foster, settlers moving out west, to give them an incentive, a land incentive, to go ahead and settle the West. The Democratic Party, however, is not united whatsoever. They're going to be split. Northern Democrats are going to support Stephen Douglas with his whole notion of popular sovereignty, to where the people should decide if they want slavery or not. And John Breckinridge represents the Southern Democratic Party interests, where he's pretty much a pro-slavery guy. I mean, plain and simple. The Whigs from the border states are going to nominate John C. Bell of Tennessee for the Constitutional Union Party. So he's going to be the fourth candidate in this election. And yeah, it's a four-way split. That's the thing. So, here we go. These are the individuals that we see, and the political cartoon in the middle is kind of weird. It's the political quadrille, which is a dance back from the 1860s, and music by Dred Scott. So up in the top left-hand corner looks like John Breckinridge dancing with Devil Andrew Jackson. On the bottom left-hand corner, it looks like Stephen Douglas dancing with a really nativist caricature of an Irish immigrant. Then on the top right-hand corner looks like Abraham Lincoln dancing with a black woman who is probably supposed to represent a slave. And on the bottom you've got John Bell dancing with a Native American. So, yeah, political cartoons back in the day, guys. Not exactly politically correct. But anyways, the big issue here is the Democrats are not united. So, had they been united with this election, I think they may have actually won. But, of course, slavery. Slavery is the premier issue of this election. And you could see the vote is along sectional lines right here. Look at that. Republican Party taking the northern states and New England, the border states, pretty much Missouri, Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia, and Delaware, are siding with, either Stephen Douglas or Bell. So, and then the solid South is going to be, siding with Southern Democrat Breckinridge. So, Lincoln actually didn't even win the popular vote, per se. Look at that. He only has 40% of the popular vote. But he picks up 59% of the electoral vote. So people in the South are pissed off at this election. Because rumor has it, he wasn't even on the ballots in the South. And therefore didn't receive a vote in the South. Somebody fact check me on that, but I want to say that that is correct. And essentially, the southern states feel that they no longer have any power whatsoever in the federal government. Here's why. Because, okay, the balance of power in the Senate is gone. Remember, Compromise 1850 blew that out of the water by letting California come in as a free state, and then this whole notion of popular sovereignty, letting other states come into the Union as free states like Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, Oregon, and of course California, Michigan. You see? So southern states can't even keep up with the Senate. Therefore, the interest of slaveholders is pretty much dashed in the Senate. Okay? In the House of Representatives, the same deal. Your areas where you have big pockets of population, where you have high immigrant populations, are going to be places like New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio. So, yeah, the South doesn't have the House, the South doesn't have the Senate, and now with the presidency, the South sure as hell does not have that either. So they feel that they no longer have a voice in politics, and therefore, it's kind of like they've reached their breaking point. Even though Abraham Lincoln has not said outright that, yeah, I don't want slavery, he hasn't said that. He's still pretty much a free soiler at this time. But it's just the threat of him in office that's enough for them. And so pretty much what's going to happen is after, his inauguration in March of 1861, we're going to have 7 of the southern states secede, which means leave the United States. They actually follow through with it this time and straight up leave. South Carolina's the first one. So they decide to leave the Union first, and then, giving into the whole ideas that the fire eaters that we were talking about before, which I want to make a correction about. Last video I told you guys the fire eaters were from the North. They're not from the North. They're from the South. They're pro-slavery extremists who want secession. They want to break away from the northern states. So there we go. These guys have been promoting secession since the 1850s, possibly before, and so now they get their chance. So South Carolina is breaking away at first, and then 6 other states are going to follow to make up the original 7 of the Confederacy. So joining South Carolina is going to be Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas. So those are your original 7. Now hold up now. Remember, we're missing a few, right? We're still missing Missouri, we're still missing Tennessee, we're still missing Virginia, we're still missing Maryland. So, essentially, we still have slave-holding states in the Union at this point in time. So, keep that in mind. We're going to come back to that idea in a minute. But okay, as a last-ditch effort, Senator Crittenden of Kentucky is going to try to propose an amendment to the Constitution that basically protects slavery. All right? He wants to try to prevent open warfare with that, reunite the nation, and protect slavery in the South, in the territories, and the slave trade, and guarantee the escape of the runaway slaves via this time a constitutional amendment, which will include the fugitive slave law in some shape or form. So these amendments he hopes will be binding, no question, that's it, for all time kind of thing. But remember, the Republicans now control Congress because, they picked up a whole bunch of congressional seats too. So the Republicans in Congress are going to kill this in committee and on the Senate floor. So the Crittenden Compromise, these proposed amendments will not see the light of day. But things are coming to a head because, check this out, we've got a crisis in our hands in South Carolina. There's a fort there, Fort Sumter. It's an army stronghold, okay? The army is essentially following the direction of Washington, right? They're following the direction of the president. So President Buchanan at this time, when the siege at Fort Sumter originally started, refuses to give it up. And so there are going to be some forces there in South Carolina that are going to keep bombarding the fort, keep the siege going. And President Lincoln, as soon as he enters office, is going to be like, oh, what do I do? Because, okay, he's got some choices to make. Does he resupply the fort? And in essence, show the Confederacy that he means business. It's an act of aggression, and therefore a war's going to come. Or does he back down and try to, like, repair the relations with the Confederacy, try to talk him back in? But he's going to be seen as weak on the national front and even on the global front, because at this time, you know, places like England, the UK are going to be like looking on, seeing what the hell goes down, because they depend on southern cotton, but they also depend on northern industry as well at this time. And that trade that they foster with the United States. So what happens on April 10th, 1861, Brigadier General Beauregard is in command of the Confederate forces. He's going to demand the surrender of Fort Sumter. Anderson is in charge of Fort Sumter. He refuses. April 12th, the Confederates are going to open fire on Fort Sumter. And by 2:30 in the afternoon, Major Anderson surrenders it. And therefore, those are considered the first firing shots of the Civil War. So, Abraham Lincoln is going to be like, all right, game on. War. So, April 15th, 1861. Yeah, it's down. It's happening. So, he's calling forth a militia. You know, he's already said that the 7 states that seceded, yeah, he's going to try to bring them back with warfare. So, because of this act of aggression, well, rather, this perceived act of aggression is going to convince other states to join the Confederacy. Arkansas, Tennessee, North Carolina, and Virginia. However, Virginia is going to be a little different, because Virginia, you notice this top notch right here? That's West Virginia. West Virginia is going to break away around this time because they don't agree with going towards the Confederacy. So they're going to break off. They're going to stay loyal to the Union. Virginia, as we know it, is going to, well, be with the Confederacy. Also, notice there are a couple more states missing. Kentucky, Missouri, and Maryland. 3 slaveholding states are missing from the Confederacy. Now, this is going to be freaking crucial to the Union, okay? Because that's what we're going to call everybody else. They're the Union, okay? Confederacy supports slavery. The Union at this time wants to preserve the Union, not necessarily get rid of slavery yet. I say yet because this is coming. So, it's going to take a long-ass time to get things squared away with the Civil War. I mean, this is going to rage on for 4 years, and it's going to be a very bloody conflict. Those border states are going to help preserve that union, because Lincoln's going to like keep them as happy as possible and not touch the slaves there, because if he does, he knows that things are going to go really bad really quick once he loses that buffer between the Confederacy and the Union, especially with Maryland. Washington, D.C. is in between Maryland and Virginia. So if he loses Maryland, that means he's surrounded in the Confederacy. So yeah, you gotta keep Maryland happy. And to keep Maryland happy at the time, you don't touch its slaves. So this is pretty much the election of 1860 for you guys. Like I said, this was supposed to be tacked on to the last video that we did, but yeah, problems with the computer. So, all right, guys, I'll catch you later with the Civil War video. Bye.